Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive. Learning English often feels like hitting a wall when you try to understand native speakers talking at natural speed or when you want to speak more naturally yourself.
Hmm.
And one of the most common pieces of advice you hear is, oh, just watch movies and TV shows.
It's great advice in theory, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sounds like the most fun homework imaginable. Settle in, watch your favorite series, and just absorb English effortlessly.
Right.
But for many learners, it quickly becomes clear that simply watching, even with subtitles on, doesn't magically make fast speech understandable
No.
or, build that speaking confidence.
Absolutely. I've heard from so many people who spend hours binging shows, maybe glued to the subtitles, picking up the odd word here and there.
Yeah,
But then they encounter real life, rapid English, and it's still just a frustrating blur. The words seem to mush together.
they really do.
And their own attempts to speak feel, I don't know, slow or unnatural compared to what they're hearing.
Well, that gap between understanding, say, written English or slow, deliberate speech and processing or producing fast conversational English, that's a major hurdle.
It really is.
And passively watching, while, yeah, it's enjoyable, it just doesn't provide the specific training needed to bridge that gap. It's like trying to become a great musician just by listening to music.
Yeah.
You actually need to practice the instrument.
Right, right. You have this incredible resource. I mean, literally millions of hours of authentic English dialogue at your fingertips.
Yeah,
But without a clear method, it's just hard to tap into its full potential for serious language improvement.
yeah,
It feels like you should be learning more than you actually are.
precisely.
Uh-huh.
And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We've gone through the source material you've provided, which lays out a really practical, actionable strategy.
Okay.
We're going to show you how to stop just watching and start using movies and TV shows as like powerful tools to dramatically improve both your listening comprehension of fast English and your ability to speak more fluently and naturally.
So we're talking about a step-by-step guide here, turning passive screen time into active learning time.
Exactly.
We'll cover how to pick the shows that are actually right for your current level because that's fundamental, isn't it?
Absolutely foundational.
Then we'll dig into concrete techniques to train your ear to process that fast, connected speech, which is probably the biggest pain point for learners.
Definitely a big one.
We'll clarify the right way to use subtitles so they actually help, not hinder. And finally, we'll look at how you can leverage this content to actively practice and improve your speaking.
Think of this deep dive as giving you the remote control and the instruction manual for effective English learning through entertainment. We're basically transforming your couch into a classroom. But, a fun one.
I love that idea, making movie night genuinely productive. So
Yeah.
let's start at the beginning, which is arguably the most overlooked step, choosing the right content. Is it really true that you can't just pick any show?
That's exactly what the source material emphasizes. I mean, sure, any exposure is probably better than none.
Right.
But if your goal is structured improvement, picking content randomly, especially something designed for native speakers with really complex plots or, like, rapid-fire dialogue, that can be counterproductive.
Okay, why is that? What happens if I pick something way too difficult? Say I'm an upper beginner and I try to watch, I don't know, a complex legal drama like Suits or something.
Well, you'll likely get overwhelmed almost immediately. The vocabulary will just be too advanced, the sentence structure is too complex, maybe the speaking speed is just way too fast.
Yeah.
You'll spend all your mental energy just trying to grasp the absolute basics, maybe looking up every third word.
Been there.
Yeah. And you won't have the cognitive space left to actually learn or, frankly, enjoy it. Frustration sets in really quickly, and you're likely to just give up on the method entirely. It feels like hitting a brick wall repeatedly.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And I imagine the opposite is also true. Picking something too easy doesn't help much either.
Right, exactly. If you choose content where you understand, say, 95% or more of everything right off the bat,
You feel great.
you feel great, but you're not really challenging yourself. You're not encountering enough new vocabulary or new grammar structures or those faster, more natural speech patterns we need to get used to.
Okay.
It's comfortable, sure, but it's not pushing you forward in your language acquisition. Learning really happens at the edge of your current ability, not
Yeah.
comfortably within it.
So finding that sweet spot is crucial. Not so hard it's demotivating, not so easy it's stagnant. How does the source guide us in finding that balance based on our level?
Well, they provide a very clear breakdown. which is helpful, offering specific types of content and examples for beginner, intermediate, and advanced learners. It acts as a great starting point.
Okay, walk us through the recommendations for beginners. What kind of shows or movies should someone just starting out look for?
Okay, so for beginners, the key words are really clarity and simplicity. The source suggests animated movies. Think classics like Toy Story or Finding Nemo.
Okay, why animated specifically?
Well, because the voice actors often speak with exceptionally clear pronunciation, much clearer than, everyday fast speech.
Right.
The dialogue is typically less complex, sentences tend to be shorter, and the storylines are often straightforward and really easy to follow visually, even if you miss a few words here and there.
Makes sense.
It's often designed for a young audience, which translates well to beginner English learners needing clear, comprehensible input.
Okay. Clear sounds, simple stories. What else works well for beginners?
Sitcoms focusing on everyday conversations are also excellent. Shows like Friends or Modern Family are frequently cited examples.
Right. Friends comes up a lot.
It does. And while they might involve some faster speech than animation sometimes, the context is usually very relatable, daily life, work, relationships. The language is conversational, it's centered on common situations, and often uses repetition or kind of predictable structures. So you start picking up common phrases and reactions fairly easily.
So even though it's live action, the type of language and the everyday context makes it beginner friendly?
Exactly. It's realistic dialogue, yes, but it's generally within a limited understandable scope. And for absolute beginners, or maybe if you find even Friends a bit fast initially, the source points to shows with very short, simple episodes. Think children's programs like Peppa Pig or Bluey.
Okay, like really basic stuff.
Really basic. The language in these is fundamental basic vocabulary, simple present tense, very clear questions and answers. Plus, the episodes are short, usually just a few minutes.
Which means you can rewatch them easily.
Exactly. Without a huge time commitment, really helps reinforce those basic building blocks. So the major benefits for beginners are definitely that clear pronunciation, simple high-frequency vocabulary, and plots that don't require complex language to understand.
Got it. Clear, simple, and relatable. Okay, what about intermediate learners? They're past the basics, but maybe still struggling with speed and more complex phrasing.
Right. For intermediates, you can definitely handle more natural, flowing speech. The source recommends TV dramas that focus more on character and conversation, rather than, say, heavily technical or jargon-filled topics.
Okay, like what?
Examples given include shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or maybe The Office.
Oh yeah, those are popular.
Very. The dialogue here is more realistic than beginner stuff. It includes common idioms, maybe some slang, cultural references you'd actually encounter in everyday interactions.
Yeah.
The pace is faster, definitely faster than beginner content, but the plots are usually followable without getting totally lost in intricate details based solely on the language.
So you're stepping up the realism of the language, getting more natural flow, but the context is still generally accessible.
Precisely. Light comedies also fall into this intermediate category, things like The Big Bang Theory or How I Met Your Mother.
Right.
Now, the humor in these can sometimes rely on wordplay or cultural understanding, which might be a bit tricky. But the underlying conversations about relationships, work, daily life, those are very common and relatable. You get exposed to more varied sentence structures and a faster conversational pace compared to beginner content.
I can definitely see how shows like that would be great for picking up common phrases and reaction sounds, the little ohs and ahs.
Absolutely, and don't forget reality shows.
Yeah.
The source mentions those too for intermediate.
Really?
Like competition shows, maybe MasterChef or The Great British Bake Off.
Why those?
Well, while there's definitely specific vocabulary related to the show's theme, cooking, baking, whatever.
Yeah, souffle, meringue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the majority of the dialogue is actually unscripted, spontaneous conversation. You hear people expressing real frustration, real excitement, asking questions, describing things in real time.
So it's authentic speech.
It's a very authentic, unrehearsed speech, which is excellent for training your ear to understand language as it's actually spoken, pauses, hesitations, overlaps, and all. So the key benefit for intermediates is that exposure to more natural flowing speech and relatable situations.
Okay, so intermediate is about stepping into more authentic, faster communication, but in generally understandable contexts. What about advanced learners? People who really want to push their limits.
Right. For advanced learners, the goal is exposure to the full spectrum of English.
Right.
We're talking very fast speech, highly complex topics, diverse accents, nuanced language, subtext,
The works.
the whole shebang. This is where you tackle movies known for their rapid-fire dialogue. Think Inception or The Social Network.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those are dense.
Very dense.
Hmm.
The characters in these films often speak incredibly quickly. Conversations are packed with information, and they can include specialized vocabulary or really intricate sentence structures. It's a significant listening challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine those movies are tough, even for some native speakers, depending on the scene. What else for advanced?
News programs and documentaries are excellent. They help expand vocabulary and understand language in more formal or academic contexts. Something like BBC News gives you exposure to standard British English.
Good for accents, too.
Exactly. While TED Talks offer just a vast range of topics with expert speakers who use sophisticated vocabulary and structured arguments, you hear different accents, formal registers, and language specific to fields like science, technology, or social issues.
That makes sense for broadening vocabulary on specific topics. And what about complex dramas?
TV dramas with sophisticated writing and intricate plots are perfect. Examples like Breaking Bad or Sherlock come to mind.
Okay.
The dialogue there often contains subtext, irony, layers of meaning, cultural references, maybe specialized vocabulary related to chemistry, crime, deductive reasoning.
Requires more interpretation.
Definitely. And characters might speak with regional accents or varying degrees of formality, depending on the situation. It requires a high level of linguistic and cultural comprehension. The benefit here is really pushing your limits with challenging language, encountering diverse topics and accents, and learning to understand that nuanced meaning.
So the source gives us this great guide based on level, beginner, intermediate, advanced with examples. But how do you really know if a specific show or movie is hitting that sweet spot for you personally? Is there a quick test or something?
Yes, thankfully. They offer a very practical rule of thumb.
Okay.
Watch a short clip, maybe just a minute or two, without any subtitles at all. Just listen. If you can understand roughly 50% to 70% of the dialogue on that first listen,
50 to 70%.
yeah, around that range.
Yeah.
If you're hitting that, the content is likely a good fit for your current level.
Ah, okay. Why that specific range? 50 to 70?
Well, think about it. If you understand less than 50%, it's probably too difficult. You'll be guessing way too much, looking up too many words, struggling just to follow the main points. There's not enough known language there to anchor your learning effectively. It leads back to that frustration.
Okay. And above 70%?
If you understand significantly more than 70%, say 85% or 90% or even higher, it's likely too easy for active learning.
Too comfortable.
Exactly. You're not encountering enough new challenges, whether it's vocabulary, grammar, or just the speed and flow to really push your learning forward effectively. You need that bit of struggle.
So 50-70% means there's enough familiar language and context to keep you from feeling completely lost. But enough unknown elements to actually stretch your abilities and give you something new to learn.
Exactly that. It's often called the comprehensible input plus one zone, or just a zone of proximal development. It's where you're challenged just enough to learn new things, but not so much that you're overwhelmed and demotivated. It's really the perfect level for active learning.
That 50-70% rule is incredibly helpful. It really takes the guesswork out of choosing. So listener, maybe right now, think about a show or movie you enjoy that might fit one of those categories we discussed. Or grab one of our examples. And keep that 50-70% test in mind next time you're choosing.
It's a great first filter.
Definitely. Choosing the right content is fundamental. But even with the perfect show, the biggest challenge often remains. Understanding fast, natural English.
Yes, the big one. This is that frustration point we mentioned right at the start. Classroom English, or language specifically produced for learners, is often slower, more clearly enunciated.
Very deliberate.
Very. Native speakers in movies and shows, they just don't talk like that. They blend words together, they drop sounds, they use rhythm and stress in ways that aren't always predictable if you're only used to textbook audio.
It's like a completely different animal. You learn going to, but you hear go.
Right.
You learn want to, you hear want. You learn kind of, you hear kinda, and they do it all so quickly.
And it's not just those common contractions like gonna or wanna. Native speakers use what linguists call connected speech all the time. It's a natural process.
Connected speech. Okay.
This happens naturally when words link together in a sentence. The end sound of one word might just merge into the beginning sound of the next, like, take cup of tea.
Okay.
The P sound at the end of cup can blend into the O sound of, and of itself often reduces to a very weak O sound, or sometimes it almost disappears entirely. So it sounds more like cup of tea.
Cup of tea, yes. I've definitely heard that. So it's not just speaking fast, it's also how the sounds themselves actually change and connect.
Exactly. That's key. Another really common one is when a word ending in a consonant sound is followed by a word starting with a vowel sound.
Like?
Well, think of an apple. When said naturally, it sounds more like an apple. The N sound just links right onto the A. Or pick it up sounds like pick it up. The K sound links to the I. The T links to the U.
Pick it up.
And sometimes, when sounds are similar at word boundaries, they can blend or even transform. Like the sound at the end of did and the Y sound at the beginning of you.
Did you?
They often blend together to make a J sound, so did you go becomes did you go.
Did you go? Wow, I hear that all the time. I never consciously thought about it as the words literally changing how they sound when they're next to each other.
It's a totally natural linguistic phenomenon. It makes speech flow faster and smoother for native speakers. But for learners, if you're sitting there expecting to hear every single word pronounced distinctly, exactly as you might find it in a dictionary,
You'll never catch it.
it's incredibly difficult to decipher. Your brain is trying to match what it hears to the isolated words it knows, and they simply don't match up.
Okay, this is the core problem then. The sound of individual words changes dramatically in natural flowing speech. So, how do we train our ears to recognize these connected speech patterns and actually process that speed?
Right. And the source provides a fantastic, really practical three-step listening exercise specifically designed for this. The power lies in focused, repetitive work on a very short segment of speech, not trying to drink from a fire hose.
Okay, focused and repetitive. I'm ready. What's step one?
Step 1. Choose a very short clip from your movie or TV show. And I mean short, the source suggests around 10 to 15 seconds.
Okay, tiny.
Tiny. Listen to this clip without any subtitles at all. Just listen. The purpose here isn't necessarily to understand everything perfectly on the first try. It's simply to expose your ear to the sounds at their natural speed and rhythm.
So no pressure.
No pressure. Just listen passively at first. Try to catch any words or phrases that sound familiar, maybe jot them down if you want, but don't stress about what you miss. It's like taking a first pass, just seeing what your ear registers initially.
So just listen, let the sounds wash over me, see what, if anything, sticks. Got it. What's step two?
Step 2 is crucial. Listen to that exact same 10 to 15 second clip again, but this time watch with English subtitles turned on.
Okay, now I use the text.
Now you use the text. And this is where you check what you thought you heard in step 1 against the actual words being spoken.
So this is where I see the words that sounded like mush before and go, oh, that's what they were saying.
Exactly. And crucially, this is where that aha moment happens regarding connected speech.
Yep.
As you read the words on the screen and simultaneously listen carefully, you start noticing how the sounds you heard that maybe blur of rapid noise correspond to the written text. And specifically, you pay attention to how those words are linked together or how their individual sounds change. You see, what do you want to do tonight? Written out.
Right.
While you're hearing something that sounds much more like, what do you want to do tonight?
And that connects the dots in your brain, right? Between the formal written form you learned and the casual spoken form you're actually hearing.
Precisely. You're actively observing those reductions, like want to wanna, and those linking patterns we talked about, like did you to didja. You see going to and here gonna. You see kind of and here kinda. This step is about building conscious awareness of how native speakers naturally distort or blend sounds when speaking quickly.
So you're training your brain to expect those changes.
Yes. To recognize these transformations as normal, not as mistakes or unclear speech, you might even pause and rewind just a couple of seconds, specifically to listen to how two particular words blend together.
That feels really targeted. You're not just reading along, you're listening differently, using the text as a guide to understand how the sound is formed in fast speech.
That's the absolute key. You're using the subtitles here to analyze the sound of the language, not just the meaning. Then comes step 3.
Okay, so I've listened without, listened with, and analyzed. Step 3 is listen again, but this time without subtitles.
Yes, exactly. Listen to that same short clip for a third time, now with the subtitles off again. The goal here is purely to test your ear.
See if the training worked.
Basically. Can you now recognize those words and phrases, including the connected speech patterns you just analyzed, purely by listening? Can you hear, what do ya wanna, without needing to read it this time.
Okay, so you get the raw sound, then you analyze the sound using the text as a map, and then you test if your ear can now recognize the analyzed sound on its own, like finding the path on the map, then trying to walk it without looking down.
That's a great analogy. And the source emphasizes that you should repeat this entire cycle. Listen without, listen with, listen without, again for the same short clip, until you feel you can understand most, or maybe even all of the sentence purely from listening.
Wow, okay. Repeat the cycle.
This focused, repetitive practice on very short segments is incredibly effective for tuning your ear to the nuances of rapid, connected English.
It might feel a bit tedious focusing on just 10 or 15 seconds over and over.
It can feel that way initially, yeah.
But I can really see how doing that intensive work on a small piece would build the underlying skill needed to handle longer segments later on.
It's exactly like lifting small weights consistently to build muscle before you try to tackle the really heavy ones. Regular practice with this three-step method, even just for, say, 15-20 minutes a day using different clips, can dramatically improve your listening comprehension of natural, fast English. It really helps turn that frustrating blur of sound into something decipherable.
That makes me feel much more hopeful about tackling fast speech. Okay, so we know how to choose the right content using the 50-70% rule, and we have this powerful three-step method for specifically training our ears. That brings us to the topic of subtitles themselves. We've already touched on using English subtitles in step 2 of the listening exercise, but how should we think about using subtitles more broadly? Because I know many learners just keep their native language subtitles on all the time.
Ah, yes, the native language subtitle habit. And that, according to the source material, is the major pitfall if your goal is listening improvement.
Why exactly?
Well, while native language subtitles are great for helping you follow the story and understand the plot, the meaning.
Which is important for enjoyment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But they almost completely bypass the English listening practice. Your brain is naturally wired to take the easiest route.
Right.
And reading in your native language is almost always much easier than decoding spoken English in real time.
So you just end up reading.
You end up reading a translation, not actively practicing your English listening skills. Your focus shifts from the audio to the text in your own language.
So native language subtitles are purely for comprehension of the plot, maybe if the English is way too hard. But they're not really a tool for learning to understand spoken English.
Precisely.
Yeah.
They can be useful for initial exposure or just pure enjoyment if you're not focused on learning in that moment. But they won't significantly improve your ability to understand the spoken English itself. And actually, even English subtitles, if used incorrectly, can become a crutch.
How so?
Well, if you always watch everything with English subtitles on, from beginning to end, you might inadvertently train yourself to just read the English text rather than truly listening to and processing the spoken English. Your eyes do the heavy lifting, not your ears.
Okay, so it's possible to rely too much even on English subtitles. So what's the right way to use them as an active tool for learning, not just a passive crutch?
The source outlines a really effective method that leverages English subtitles strategically, building on what we just discussed with the listening exercise. Step 1. Watch a section of the show or a short clip with the English subtitles turned on first.
Okay, start with them on. This sounds similar to step 2 of our intensive listening exercise.
It is, and for very similar reasons. Watching with English subtitles first helps you clearly see the connection between the written word and the spoken sound. You see how words are spelled while hearing their natural pronunciation in context.
Especially helpful for tricky spellings or silent letters.
Absolutely, and it's vital for associating the visual form of a word with its actual sound, especially reinforcing those connected speech patterns we talked about. You see what are you and hear what ya.
It also helps you learn new vocabulary in context, right? You see a new word, read it, hear it used naturally.
Exactly, and you can pause easily, look it up as needed, see how it fits into the sentence. It's a much more effective way to acquire vocabulary than just memorizing lists, because you see and hear the word used meaningfully. So this first step is all about building a strong link between the auditory input and the visual form of the language.
Okay, build the sound-text connection. And then step 2.
Step 2. Watch the exact same section or clip again, but this time, turn the English subtitles off.
Okay, take the training wheels off.
Exactly. Now that you've seen the script, you understand the basic content from step 1, your brain kind of has a blueprint. This second viewing forces your ear to rely solely on processing the spoken English without the safety net of reading along.
So it's focused, pure listening practice.
Pure listening practice. You're actively trying to recognize the sounds you just connected to the written words in the previous step.
This sounds like it builds directly on the three-step listening exercise method, but maybe applied more broadly to a whole scene or section of a show, not just 15 seconds.
It does. It's about systematically moving from supported listening with subs to unsupported listening without subs, building your ears' independence and confidence. And then, step 3 as an active production element, shadowing.
Shadowing again, we mentioned this briefly. What does that involve in this subtitle method?
Shadowing, in this context, means actively trying to repeat what you hear, often immediately after you hear it. With movies or TV shows, a practical way to do this is to pause the video after a sentence or maybe a short, meaningful phrase,
Okay.
and then try to repeat it out loud, really focusing on imitating the pronunciation, the rhythm, and the intonation of the native speaker as closely as you possibly can.
So you're not just passively listening anymore, you're actively trying to produce the sounds yourself, using the character as your direct model.
Precisely. You're trying to copy the melody of the sentence, the way they link words together, the stress patterns on important words, maybe even subtle things like, vocal fry or aspiration if you really want to get advanced.
Let's try a quick, simple example right now. Listener, listen carefully to this common phrase, paying attention to the sound and rhythm, and then pause the audio right after and try to repeat it out loud, copying what you heard. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Pause for listener to repeat.
Good. The very act of trying to reproduce the sounds you just heard reinforces the connection between the auditory input and your own spoken output. It helps you feel how your mouth needs to move to make those specific English sounds and builds muscle memory for English pronunciation and rhythm.
So this method, watching with English subtitles first, then watching again without, and then shadowing key phrases, is a powerful loop. It connects listening, strategic reading, and speaking practice, making subtitles an active learning tool rather than a passive aid.
Precisely. It's a world away from just passively reading a translation in your native language while the English audio plays in the background. You're engaging with the English in multiple active ways.
Okay, this is fantastic. We've covered choosing the right show with the 50-70 rule, training your listening with that focused three-step method, and using subtitles effectively in this loop. But how does simply watching translate into actually improving your own speaking skills? It still feels like a mostly passive activity, while speaking is obviously active.
That's a completely valid question, and you're right, watching alone isn't a substitute for real interactive conversation practice with another person.
Right.
However, the source material highlights how you can extract valuable speaking practice from movies and TV shows, using specific techniques that build directly on what we've just discussed, especially shadowing.
Okay, tell me more. What are these specific speaking exercises we can do with shows?
Well, the first one is shadowing again, but this time employed with a specific focus on improving your fluency and accent by intensely mimicking native speakers.
So maybe a slightly different way of doing it than just pausing and repeating.
Yes, a more advanced variation. This involves choosing a short sentence or even a very short clip again. That 10-15 second length is good here too, and attempting to speak at the same time as the character is saying their lines.
Whoa, hold on. Speaking simultaneously with the character, that sounds incredibly difficult.
It is challenging, no doubt about it, especially at first. But the goal isn't necessarily perfection right away. The goal is to try your best to match the character's speed, their rhythm, and their pronunciation in real time. You're literally trying to overlay your voice onto theirs, maybe following just microseconds behind their lead.
Wow, okay. What does that intense simultaneous mimicry actually do for your speaking? Why is it effective?
It's an incredibly powerful way to force your mouth, your tongue, your whole vocal apparatus muscles to work in sync with the natural flow and rhythm of English. You're building muscle memory for the sounds and for the linking patterns that native speakers use effortlessly and unconsciously.
Muscle memory for speech.
Exactly. Think of it like a musician practicing scales at increasing speed. It builds dexterity and fluidity. By constantly trying to keep up with the speaker on screen, you're training your mouth to move faster and more efficiently to produce English sounds in natural sequences. It directly impacts your pronunciation, helps reduce hesitation, and ultimately improves your overall fluency.
So it's almost like physical training for your mouth, getting it used to the speed and the specific shapes required for fluent English.
Exactly. It's not just a cognitive exercise. It's very much physical practice for speech production. Now, the other effective speaking exercise mentioned is role play.
Okay, role play. This sounds potentially more interactive, even if you're just doing it by yourself.
It is, in a way. You pick a short conversation scene, maybe between two or more characters. Then you pause the video after each line of dialogue is spoken,
Hmm.
and you say one of the character's lines out loud, as if you were that character taking your turn in the conversation.
I'm essentially having a conversation with the characters on the screen, acting out one side of it.
Essentially, yes, you are taking on a character's role. The key benefit here, compared to just shadowing single sentences, is that you're practicing speaking lines in context. You're not just saying isolated sentences. You're responding within a dialogue structure, reacting to what was just said.
And should I just say the words, or should I try to sound like the character?
Definitely try to sound like the character. The source suggests trying hard to match the character's tone, their emotion, and their speed. Ask yourself, were they asking a question with that typical rising intonation? Were they delivering bad news with a more somber, flat tone? Were they speaking really excitedly with lots of energy? Try to inject that same feeling and intent into your voice when you say their line.
So this helps you practice the expressiveness of English, the intonation and emotion, not just saying the correct words.
Absolutely. It moves you beyond just focusing on accurate grammar and vocabulary, which are important, of course. But it gets you practicing how meaning, emotion, and nuance are conveyed through intonation, stress, and pace in a realistic conversational exchange. It builds confidence in delivering lines naturally and expressively, as you would need to in a real conversation. You're practicing performing the language, in a sense.
Let's try another quick example, combining maybe shadowing and role play. Imagine a friend you haven't seen in ages bumps into you on the street. Listener, listen to this enthusiastic greeting, focusing on the friendly tone and the rhythm, and then try to say it immediately after, copying that sound. Hey, long time no see. Pause for listener to repeat.
Nice. Practicing these techniques regularly, that simultaneous shadowing for fluency and accent muscle memory, and the role play for confidence, expressive delivery and context, provides a really powerful way to turn passive viewing into active speaking practice. It helps bridge that gap between understanding the language and being able to produce it naturally yourself, using native speakers directly as your models.
It really does shift the perspective, doesn't it? Movies and TV aren't just something you consume. They're like a dynamic script, a massive sound library, and a cast of diverse native speaker tutors all rolled into one.
Exactly right.
Huh.
It's all about engaging with the content actively, with the specific learning goal in mind for each viewing session, or even just for each short clip practice.
Wow, okay. We've covered a tremendous amount today. Hopefully for anyone listening who's felt overwhelmed by fast English or hesitant to speak, you now have a much clearer roadmap to harness the power of movies and TV shows for learning.
Absolutely. We've really tried to transform that vague advice of just watch shows into a structured, effective learning methodology based on the practical insights from our source material.
Right. Just to quickly recap the key steps we walked through. First, we hammered home the critical importance of choosing the right content for your specific level. For beginners, think clear pronunciation, simple plots, animated movies like Toy Story, everyday sitcoms like Friends, or even very short, simple shows like Peppa Pig.
For intermediate learners, you want to step up to more natural conversations. Maybe dramas like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like comedies like The Big Bang Theory, or get that authentic, spontaneous speech from reality shows like MasterChef. And remember that 50–70% comprehension rule without subtitles is your guidepost there.
And for advanced learners, it's time to challenge yourself. Rapid dialogue in movies like Inception, complex topics in news or documentaries like TED Talks, or really nuanced language in sophisticated dramas like Sherlock.
Then second, we tackled that big challenge of understanding fast English head-on with a specific 3-step listening exercise. Listen without subtitles first. Get the raw sound. Then listen with English subtitles to analyze how words link and sounds change. Remember what do I hada, becoming what do you want to. And finally, listen without subtitles again to test your improved recognition purely by ear. And repeat that cycle for short clips until you get it.
Third, we learned how to use English subtitles correctly as an active tool, not a passive crutch. Watch with English subtitles first to connect sound and text and learn new words in context. Then watch the same section without subtitles for pure listening practice. And finally, use shadowing, pausing, and repeating to actively copy the pronunciation and rhythm you heard.
And fourth, we explored how to actively improve your speaking skills using these same materials. That includes the challenging simultaneous shadowing technique to build muscle memory for fluency and natural rhythm.
Yeah, the tough one.
And role play, where you pause after lines in a scene and practice delivering them yourself, matching the character's appropriate tone, emotion, and speed, which builds confidence in expressive speaking.
These aren't just abstract tips. They're really actionable techniques that, when you practice them consistently, can make a massive difference. Watching becomes less about passive entertainment and much more about active skill building.
It really empowers you, the listener, to take control of your learning using content you likely already enjoy and definitely have access to.
All right, so now for your challenge for today. This is where you get to put these techniques into practice, maybe right after listening to this.
Yes. Based on everything we've discussed, pick something concrete you can do right now or the very next time you sit down to watch a movie or TV show in English.
Step 1. Choose a short clip. Again, that 10 to 15 seconds is ideal, according to the source. Maybe it's a funny line you liked, a character's introduction, or just a piece of dialogue you found interesting or maybe a bit tricky.
Step 2. Apply our core listening exercise to that clip. Listen to it 3 times. First without any subtitles, then with the English subtitles turned on. Really pay close attention here to how words sound different or linked together compared to how they're written. And finally, listen without subtitles again. Notice how much more you can understand the third time around just by listening.
And step 3. Pick just one sentence from that clip. Use the shadowing technique. You can start with pausing and repeating if simultaneous feels too hard right now, and attempt to say it exactly like the character did. Focus on matching their pronunciation and the natural flow of the sentence.
And seriously, we would absolutely love to hear about how it goes for you. You could tell us, what movie or TV show clip did you choose for your challenge? As you went through those 3 steps, what felt like the most difficult part? Was it the initial listening without subtitles, or noticing the connected speech details with the subtitles, or maybe the active practice of shadowing the sentence?
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah.
And did this focused attention on just a short clip help you notice any new words or phrases or pronunciation details that you hadn't really caught before? Share your experience with us.
It's great to learn from each other's experiences.
No.
Now looking ahead, now that you have a powerful, structured method for using visual media like movies and TV to improve your listening and speaking in general conversation, let's think about another specific communication context that many English learners find particularly daunting.
Uh-oh. What is it?
Phone calls.
Oh, phone calls. Yes, those are tough. It really is like listening practice on hard mode, isn't it? You lose all the visual context. You can't see facial expressions or gestures or even just watch the other person's mouth move. All those little cues that help you understand in person or even when watching shows, they're just gone.
Exactly. You have to rely entirely on the auditory cues and on clear verbal communication from both sides. Misunderstandings feel much more likely, and knowing how to navigate them gracefully, how to ask for clarification politely, that's a very specific skill.
So our next deep dive is going to tackle that challenge directly. Phone calls in English.
It will. Based on the source material we have for that, we'll provide clear strategies and useful language to make phone calls in English feel much less stressful and become much more effective for you.
Okay, what kind of things will we cover?
We'll teach you how to initiate and conclude calls smoothly and politely in different situations. We'll cover key phrases for common tasks, like scheduling appointments over the phone or maybe asking for specific information. And importantly, we'll give you practical tips and phrases for what to do when you don't understand something, or when you need someone to repeat themselves, or speak more slowly on the phone.
That sounds incredibly useful. It's such a practical, essential skill in many real-world situations, work, personal life, everything. You definitely won't want to miss that one. Make sure you're following along or subscribed so you catch our next deep dive, which will be titled, How to Handle Phone Calls in English.
And as we wrap up today's deep dive, just remember the core takeaway. Learning English doesn't have to be confined just to textbooks and grammar exercises. It can be enjoyable. With the right approach, even your entertainment time, watching movies and shows, can become highly productive learning time. You now have the tools, these specific techniques, to turn passive watching into active, focused practice that directly addresses those common challenges of understanding fast speech and speaking more naturally.
So grab that remote. Choose your content strategically using that 50-70 rule. Maybe try the 3-step listening cycle on a short clip and start applying these techniques today. Your favorite characters are basically ready and waiting to become your personal language tutors.
That's right. We'll see you for the next deep dive on phone calls. And until then, keep watching, keep practicing actively, and really enjoy the journey of becoming a more confident English speaker and listener.